Hey, what's up everybody? Smooth Terrorist back once again, and this video is going to be a reply to davidmcmurdo.com and his video Nationalism and Activism parentheses response to the Smooth Terrorist. But I'm not going to title this video Nationalism and Activism Response to the Smooth Terrorist. I'm going to title it The Perils of Tribalism Part 3, because I want anybody who stumbles upon one of these videos to understand that it's part of a series and to be able to find the other pertinent videos that are in that series. But I'm not going to respond to David McMurdo right away. First, there's some other things I want to talk about. I want to give you guys a little status update on the project, and I also want to talk about some comments that I received on the last video. First, there were a few comments on the last video. I don't think there were many of these. There may have actually only been one, and one is too many, of people saying, you know, I don't see why this is such a big deal. I don't see why thermonuclear annihilation is such a looming threat in your mind. You know, there's other important issues to worry about. Why are you so concerned with this? Now, I almost feel like it's pointless wasting too much time talking about that, because if you have that opinion, if you're one of these people who doesn't think that nuclear war is a real threat, or even worse, if you're one of these people who thinks that nukes make it a safer world, that really is an opinion that's out there. People have this opinion that the wars of the future are going to be much smaller in scale because nations will be afraid to go to war the way we have in the past because they know that nukes will be involved and it's going to keep conflict smaller. If you believe that, then for all intents and purposes, as far as this project that I'm doing is concerned, you're pretty much useless. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to engage you nevertheless, and I don't want to try to change your mind. I do. And it's for this reason that I've compiled a list of videos in the description section down below. And the videos that I've got in the description section down below are as follows. The first one is a video with an older gentleman in a nice suit with a British accent whose first name is Professor. And he's basically saying a lot of the same things that I've been saying in my videos about this topic. Because I've made an interesting observation about human nature, which is that you can make the most cogent, persuasive argument in the world, but if you've got a bandana over your face and people know that you're poor and that you got really drunk one time, they'll think it's crazy talk. Whereas if you can find a respectable-looking older gentleman in a nice suit with a British accent, and his first name is Professor, and he's saying basically the same things, suddenly some people will take that much more seriously. So the second video on the list, in the description section down below, is a video about nuclear winter, the effects of a large-scale nuclear exchange, and what will happen. Now, I don't. It's hard for me to get a gauge on how many people take that seriously, and I almost have this fear that because there have been so many nuclear detonations, the various nuclear-armed nations have tested over 1,000 of these bombs at this point. I'm worried that people might have this conception, like, oh, you know, there's nuclear winter, that's a flawed theory, it would have happened already, and they just don't get that one bomb here and there isn't going to cause these sort of effects. In other words, sediment and dust being thrown up into the atmosphere where it remains, possibly for years, blocking out the sun and killing crops and making the temperature very cold. This isn't something that'll happen unless there's a full-scale exchange. But the second video in my list down below is going to explain what would happen, and in other words, why this is a bad thing, why this is something we want to avoid, which I'm tempted to just think like, well, why, why would I have to explain this to anybody? But I realize that, nothing goes without saying. You do have to qualify everything. You have to explain everything. So that second video in the list, that's for you guys. The third list is what I call the close calls list, and I think I have 5 short videos, guys, short videos, that talk about some close calls we've had with nuclear annihilation. Now, Gore Vidal, who I happen to think is kind of an asshole, he once said something, he once said that we live in the United States of amnesia, and that we're a country that doesn't remember its history. And I don't think that's just the United States. I think that's kind of the same everywhere. But, the reason that so many people are familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's scary how many people are not, but the ones who are, the reason that they know about it is because it would have been impossible for leaders to bury this incident. Either leaders here in the United States, leaders in Russia, Kennedy would have had a hard time explaining to the American public why he sent a huge naval blockade to Cuba if nothing was wrong, if nothing was going on. So the media had to come clean, the leaders had to come clean. But there have been so many near misses with annihilation, every bit as serious, if not more so, than the Cuban Missile Crisis, that the general public, either the public in the United States, the public in Russia, or just the people in general elsewhere in the world, that they have no idea about. You haven't heard about them at all. And the reason is because if nothing ostensible happens, which necessitates leaders to tell you about it, they will not tell you about it. And the media isn't going to go out of their way and report something they don't have to, because they're lapdogs and they're not going to bite in the hand that feeds. So these incidents, for example, like the Norwegian rocket incident, there's no reason for you to be informed about that. If it can be buried, if it can be covered up, it will be covered up. Now, perhaps some people are wondering why I mentioned the Norwegian rocket incident so much in particular, instead of Able Archer or any of these other near misses. The reason is because it happened in 1995. And that's yesterday, guys. I mean, if you purchased a new car, a new vehicle in 1995, chances are you probably haven't even had to get a tune-up on it yet. So I think that goes to show that the threat is still very real. It may actually be worse now that we have all these new players entering the nuclear club, as they call it. And what happens if there's an exchange between, for example, India and Pakistan? Do you think that perhaps Russia and the United States would be drawn into that conflict, resulting in a full-scale nuclear world war? Well, it's a possibility, and I think if you're a rational person, it's a possibility that you can't just discount. So anyway, video list in the description section down below for anybody who doubts that that nuclear annihilation is a serious problem and one that's worth being concerned over. Please check out that list. By the way, my close calls section in the list down below is by no means complete. By no means is that a complete list. I'm sure I've left some things out, and not only that, but there's undoubtedly near misses that we don't even have access to information about. In other words, not only has the media chosen not to emphasize these, but they don't even know about them at all. It's a complete blackout. I'm sure there have been tons of incidents like that, megatons, if you'll pardon the pun. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about the status of the project, the think tank. Right now, it's going nowhere. I think I had this vain hope that a venue would be chosen through consensus within the comments section of my last video. And I realize now why that was a flawed theory and why it won't work. And the reason is because the interaction between myself and my audience is the interaction of a vlogger with his audience. In other words, I have this bully pulpit where I can get on a webcam and talk for an hour, and you guys have to respond with a 500 character text limit, which, so the interaction that we're having right now is already heavily tainted by the specter of hierarchy. And what that means is that I can't take a passive role. I can't just sit back and say, okay guys, let's have a consensus, let's think tank where to go do the think tank. That's not going to work. I am going to have to steer this. I'm going to have to pick a place, and then I'm going to have to say, hey guys, here's the link, this is where we're all going, everybody go, everybody go. And once we get there, then it becomes a leaderless collective. That's what I'm shooting for here. Now, a couple of people have suggested that I register a message board myself. I will do that if I have to, but I'm reluctant to make anything, because then it would be seen as mine, and I would be seen as a leader, which is counterproductive. But here is what I would like. In the comments of the last video, I suggested maybe using an IRC chat with like hashtag Operation Doomsday or something along that line. And people rightly pointed out that a chat session is not conducive to this project, because any progress that's made will be lost after the temporary chat section is over. In other words, ideas are not archived. So I agree with the people who made that criticism that yes, a message board or a forum is the right venue to do this. But I think it's critical that everyone who participates be anonymous. I think that the egos will destroy this project, and we must be able to post anonymously. It's not enough to just use aliases so that we cannot be recognized by our YouTube names. I think we must also be completely anonymous, so that all ideas carry the same weight, so that all criticisms carry the same weight. I don't want any name fags in this project, including myself. I mean, everyone will be anonymous, and I hope that the first day or the first few days won't be spent with people trying to figure out, oh, which one of these people is the Smooth Terrorist, which one of these people is Sarahan, which one of these people is David McMurdo. I definitely don't want that. But I have no way of preventing it, because there will be no, and this is another crucial factor that I think we need. This has to take place in a message board where posts can be archived. It has to be anonymous, and furthermore, no moderation, no moderators, no administrators kicking people out, no flag buttons. Nothing like that. No voting posts down. Well, voting, I can see how that might actually be useful at some point. But nothing can be censored. That's critical. So, to everybody who's interested in participating, everybody in the audience, my request for you is, if you know of such a message board or forum that exists somewhere that we can just go occupy and use, please send me a private message about it. Don't leave it in the comments. Send me a private message so I don't miss it if it gets buried, and let me know. And rest assured, I am looking for something like this right now. I'm not putting all the onus on you guys, but I could use your help if you know of a place like that. Now, let me go ahead and begin responding to davidmcmurdo.com and his video, Nationalism and Activism Response to the Smooth Terrorist, which was 33 minutes long and a joy to watch. Every very, very intelligent commentary. A great video, and I appreciate the video. Well, here's the thing, David McMurdo, and by the way, just to throw this in there, being somebody who's ethnically both Scottish and English, I'm with you 100% on the stupidity of the whole England versus Scotland thing. right there with you, buddy. It drives me nuts too. Now, David McMurdo, he, David McMurdo, the essential, to distill your 33-minute long video into one essential Cliff's Notes premise, David McMurdo is basically saying, can I participate in this think tank? I'm interested in joining, but is it a problem that I'm a theist, and is it a problem that I'm a statist? Well, here's the thing, David McMurdo. You're a passionate, intelligent guy who understands that there's a problem. And it would be absurd for me to tell you that you can't participate. And not only that, I don't see how I would prevent you from participating if I wanted to. Because I don't envision this project being something where anybody gets kicked or banned for any reason. For one thing, who would be doing the kicking and banning if there's no moderators and administrators? Hopefully no one has the power to kick or ban. And even if they did, that's absurd. I'm not gonna check anyone's anarchist credentials at the door. I'm not gonna check anyone's atheist credentials at the door. I am not the captain of the kickball team, and you don't have to wave your hand around saying pick me, because it's not up to me to decide whether you participate or not. If you choose to participate, that's your choice, and I can't stop you. And in fact, because you're such an intelligent guy and because you're passionate about this issue, I encourage you to participate, and I hope that you do. And I do think that it's a good thing for there to be at least one statist participating in this project so that we have more of a diversity of opinion. But I do have some concerns about your participation, and I'm going to share those with you, just so that you're aware. Now, you said that you're a theist, and you asked, is it a problem? Is it a problem that I believe in God? And I don't see any problem at all with that. Let me let this emergency vehicle go past here. Okay. The way I see it, there's no tribalism implied or inherent in the fact that you believe in God. You didn't mention being part of any organized religion, and that's where the tribalism enters into the equation. The fact that you believe in God is academic. It has nothing to do with this topic, and I don't see how that would prevent you from making a valuable contribution to this effort. Now, David McMurdo said that, because he is a theist, he will view this problem in spiritual terms, and because I am an atheist, I will view this problem in secular terms. There's a time when I might have agreed with that statement, but not anymore, because when I read the comments section on the first video in this series, The Perils of Tribalism Part 1, and I saw these anti-natalists saying things like, well, what's the big deal, smooth terrorist? Let the human species go extinct. Why is this a problem? And by the way, in the Perils of Tribalism Part 2 comment section, I got some people saying, oh, you're mischaracterizing the anti-natalist position. We don't advocate the extinction of the human species. We just want to reduce the population. We're just Malthusians. Well, fine. But I'm not the one mischaracterizing your position. I'm not the one making a straw man. You've got people in your own camp who do advocate the extinction of the human species because they were in my first comment section in the first video saying so. So don't accuse me of mischaracterizing your position. That's an internal problem. You guys need to work that out amongst yourselves, because I'm the uninitiated. This anti-natalism stuff is virgin territory to me. I know nothing about it, so I can only meet you guys on your own ground and respond to the things that you tell me. Anyway, but the point is, when I saw those comments on the first video, it was such a curveball that came at me out of left field it was a wake-up call to me that anyone thought that way. I can honestly say that this is something I've been thinking about most of my life, most of my adult life. It's a problem that I've been trying to work on and solve most of my life. And there was never a point at which, not even for a fraction of a second, the question entered into my consideration of is the human species worth saving? Perhaps this is a good thing. Maybe existence and life just sucks so much that we're all better off dead. I can honestly say that never entered into my consideration once. It was a non sequitur for me. I was like, wow, what a concept. And I think reading those comments on that first video made me realize that there really is, this is not an entirely secular issue. There are some real spiritual implications. There are some philosophical implications to this issue that I hadn't even considered before. But I don't see how it's any kind of problem that you're a theist, David McMurdo, that you believe in God. You clearly aren't a religious bigot. You don't come off that way, which means that there's no tribalism implied or suggested in the fact that you're a theist. But you are a statist. You stated in no uncertain terms that you are not an anarchist, which, simple deduction means that you're a statist. I do kind of have a problem with that. It's a cause of concern for me. And here again, I got to reiterate, I am not the captain of the kickball team who has the authority to grant you permission to participate or bar you from participating. If you want to participate, there's nothing I can do to stop you. But I do have a concern, and here is what my concern is. I had the hope, perhaps the vain hope, that by recruiting members of this think tank from among my audience, I would wind up by default with a think tank that's comprised primarily of stateless individuals. That is to say, anarchists, people who don't believe in government. And that because of that, some innovative solutions would be produced. Now, I don't have a problem with one or two statists participating. I think that's actually a good thing. My fear is that this think tank will be co-opted by too many statists, to the point where the stateless perspective, the anarchist perspective, is marginalized, just the same way that it is in society at large. And that the consensus which is reached by the think tank at the end of the process will be a statist consensus. Now, what's wrong with that, you may ask, and you may very well ask, being that you're not an anarchist. Well, here's the problem, David McMurdo. You're a very intelligent, passionate guy, like I said before, but there are already plenty of passionate, intelligent, indeed genius statists who recognize that thermonuclear war is a real threat. They recognize that it's a problem, and consistently, year after year, they fail to produce a solution to the problem. And it's my crackpot theory that the reason they consistently fail is that their statism is a blinder, which prevents them from seeing the real solutions. Okay? Now you are somebody who recognizes that tribalism, i.e. nationalism, ethnic bigotry, you realize that those are problems, and you recognize that. Yet you believe in government. And because you believe in government, the solutions that you come up with to this problem are likely to be statist solutions. Now let me give you some examples of what those might be. A statist might suggest, all the people in Russia and all the people in the United States need to rise up, overthrow their leaders, seize control of the infrastructure, seize control of the missile silos, seize control of the nuclear subs. In other words, people in both nations need to say, hey, Our leaders are out of control, they're going to blow the world up, and we need to prevent this from happening. Well, as Max Stirner pointed out, revolution is an inherently statist activity. That is to say, a revolution will never replace a government with a stateless society. It'll just replace a government with another government. And, you know, a solution like that would put us back at square one, because then we would have two heavily armed nuclear states that are simply under new management. You've replaced the old leaders with new leaders. Here's the new boss, just like the old boss. And that leaves us back at square one. It fails to solve the problem. Now, what other solutions might a statist come up with to this problem? Peace through superior firepower, right? Pax Romani. I think we know that doesn't work, don't we? Statist solutions would rely heavily on it. I think like intervention, regulation, like arms inspections, disarmament treaties, diplomatic solutions. Disarmament actually looked promising for about 5 minutes, and then the proliferation began again, didn't it? And we ended up back at square one. So my concern is that if this project is co-opted by statists, if this project is co-opted by too many people with the statist perspective, then the anarchist position will be marginalized, just the way it always is. Because the stateless perspective has always been one that's considered an extremist perspective, right? We're the wacko kooks. And we'll essentially fall into the trap of doing what we've always done and getting what we've always gotten. It'll be more of the same, more solutions that do not work. That's my fear. And, while I encourage you to participate, David McMurdo, I think you're, like I said before, it's clear that you're passionate about this issue, and that does count for a lot, and you're a very intelligent guy. I think that you should ask yourself, will I harm this effort more than I'll help it? There are plenty of statist efforts underway to try to solve this problem, and you might ask yourself if your input would be more valuable in one of those than in this project that I'm trying to do right here. But once again, that decision is for you to make. I am not going to bar anyone from participating. That would, the minute I exercise any kind of control over this project, the minute I make myself the boss, the project fails. The leaderless collective is lost, and it's destroyed. So I cannot do this. I cannot exercise any control. So in other words, your participation is up to you, David McMurdo, and whatever decision you make, I support it 100%. And thank you for your video. It was a great video. You made a lot of fantastic points, and I definitely didn't feel like 33 minutes of my life was going by. Fantastic video. Now there's one other thing that I want to talk about. Just a little idea that I had. Somebody in the last, I'm actually not sure if it was the comments section of the perils of tribalism part 1 or part 2. It could have been either one. But somebody said, well, Smooth Terrorist, this project is doomed to fail. You don't have a chance of succeeding in coming up with a solution. And the reason is because tribalism is inherent in human nature, and people see their nation as an extension of their tribe. And that person wasn't really telling me anything that I don't already know. I know that tribalism is inherent in human nature. That's fucking obvious as the day is long. But that did give me an idea. And the idea that I had was, tribalism is an instinct. It has everything to do with evolutionary biology. And that instinct, if it's possible for that instinct to be perverted by memes, by mind viruses, to the point in which people consider something as vast and as abstract and basically as non-existent as a country to be an extension of their tribe, then shouldn't it be possible through the use of memes to pervert that same instinct, that same tribalist instinct, into making people consider something as abstract as the entire human species to be their tribe? But what I'm essentially saying here is that, look at something like the United States, for example. There's really no ideological cohesion in this country. That's why we have a culture war. There are so many different perspectives, yet people think of themselves, people who live here consider themselves Americans. They don't think of themselves just as people. They think of themselves as Americans, even though there's no cohesion, even though this thing called America is entirely imaginary. So if they can view themselves as part of something that abstract and take it very seriously, why can they not view themselves as simply part of the human race? And why can't that be the abstract tribe that they're a part of? Now, to make this happen, it would take a meme of such cunning genius that I am incapable of producing it on my own. I think any single human being would be incapable of producing that single-handedly. That is the kind of feat of genius that can only emerge from a hive mind. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this in the first place, is I'm essentially trying to increase my processing power with the effort of like-minded individuals. Because that's how hive mind works, guys. Every individual who participates is a single neuron in the mass brain. And you just basically increase your processing power. Now, a flaw that you might find with this is to say, well, there have been some very successful memes. There have been some very successful mind viruses, such as Christianity, very successful meme. Islam, very successful meme. Marxism, communism, very successful meme. But none of these have ever achieved total saturation. That is to say, there was never a point at which everybody in the world was a Christian. And, how do you think, Smooth Terrorist, that you're going to be capable, or that the collective that you're trying to form is going to be capable of producing a meme that can achieve total saturation? Well, I want to point out that there are some mind viruses that you may not think of as memes, yet they are, and they have achieved near total saturation. Okay. For example, the meme that slavery is bad. That's like a global shift in the zeitgeist. And granted, a lot of people would make the argument, myself being one of them, that slavery still exists. It's just been hidden. It's changed its form. Nevertheless, there's been a definite shift in the global moral zeitgeist, to the point where no matter where in the world you go, if you ask about slavery, people by and large are going to say, I'm against it. I'm against it. I don't believe in it. Another example I could think of off the top of my head would be environmentalism. This is a meme that's achieved near total saturation. There's almost nowhere you can go, barring quibbling academic examples, like, if you were to ask uncontacted tribes in New Guinea, or something along that lines. Anywhere, any modern society, anywhere you go in the world, you'll find that the population has incorporated and taken that meme on board in some way. People are green everywhere in the world. Now, if you object and say, well, that's not a meme, there are perfectly rational scientific reasons to believe in environmentalism. Well, granted, that might be true. But the average person on the street, no matter where we're talking about, whether it's Russia, the United States, France, England, Germany, China, whatever the fuck, the average person doesn't understand the science. And yet they will tell you that climate change is an issue, that pollution is a problem, that deforestation is a problem. So it is possible for memes to go global. It's possible for memes to achieve near total, if not total, saturation. And I think that's what's needed. I think, despite the fact that I tend to operate within the patriot movement circles, that I tend to operate within constitutionalist circles, and I tend to associate with those type of people. Despite that, I am very much a globalist. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool globalist. That isn't to say that I want a new world order ran by global banking cartels and the International Monetary Fund and the Bilderberg Group, and I don't want all that, but I do want the world to be one world. I hate national sovereignty. I hate the idea of American sovereignty, American exceptionalism, etc. I think we need to be one world. We need to be one world very quickly, and I am every bit a globalist for that reason. And my hope, perhaps my vain hope, for this think tank is that a meme capable of achieving total saturation and getting people to think of the world as their tribe may be produced. And maybe you're saying, well, hey, that meme already exists and it's called multiculturalism. You're trying to reinvent the wheel here. I think multiculturalism is to the extent to which it's working, it's not working fast enough. And I think I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of its chance of success. I'll put it that way. I think more powerful memes are needed, and and this whole meme idea. I mean, I don't want to confine our efforts to this. Okay. That would stifle innovation. If there's another way of addressing this problem, if there's another way of diffusing this bomb, then I want that to be encouraged. I don't want to hold this effort back by making a box that people are trapped within. By all means, think outside the box. Let's not just confine this effort to coming up with a meme, because the meme thing is just one man's idea. Okay. But yeah, David McMurdo, I wholeheartedly encourage you to participate, and thank you for your video. But to any statist, not just you, to any statist who's considering participating in this think tank, I just want you to consider whether or not your efforts might be more useful elsewhere. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. So this has been The Smooth Terrorist. If you enjoyed this video, then download it, re-upload it, mirror it, parody it, make it your own. Because the tribalists at Google cannot censor me unless you let them. Keep it smooth.